Good morning, gang. My name is Ray. I'm with Team S.T.E.A.M. And in this video, we're going to be working on this, I believe it's a 2007 Kenworth W900 that nearly burnt all the way to the ground. As you can see, that paint is just bubbled up everywhere. This is a truck that we previously painted years ago. I don't know how many years ago, like 8 years ago or something like that. And I mean, it almost burnt this truck to the ground. I'm guessing this panel is warped. This one is badly warped, but once you get back away from it and look at it square, I don't know how well it's going to show up on video, but I mean, you can see it's just warped. So I got to do something about that. I got to do something about that. Even the roof cap got cracked. This side of the roof cap here also got blistered. I mean, this truck almost burnt to the ground. But before we get this guy pulled in the shop, I got a couple other projects I'm working on. Good morning. I do have my work cut out for me. Very odd. I was pretty impressed. I'm gonna do what I always do on these trucks. And that just happens to be my thing, by the way. This paint job's probably 5-6 years old. All right, I'm pretty happy with that. And here he is leaving. It wasn't quite as fun as I was expecting. And that starts right about now. Two of which are these two toolboxes, plus there's two big brackets inside of that toolbox. But that's gonna happen during or toward the latter half of that project, probably. It's a gorgeous Saturday morning, May 23rd, 2026. And we're gonna be taking this wheelbarrow on over to this area of the garden right here. And if you've watched very many of my videos at all, and you saw the one that was titled, You're Gonna Dig This, or something like that. And it was the one where I took my backhoe and I dug the whole water line right here. This is where that was. This is where I dug that big pit. That's my water tank. That's where I tied into the corner of the water tank. And as you can see, it's sunk down. Maybe you can't see it on the video, but that's sunk down quite a bit since last year. Even this little ditch right here is sunk down. That's where I buried my water line. The rest of it I've kept up on because we drive over it and I don't want a bunch of ruts in my driveway. This I haven't, because I haven't gotten any equipment up in here. I haven't done anything with it yet, but I will. And same with this. This is one of the first things I'm going to do is fill all this in, get this back up to level, and then we'll take that same wheelbarrow over here. We're going to get rid of all these trellises that you can see that we used from last year's tomatoes. These are just little temporary trellises that I cut out of pig panels. They work perfect for that. And we have quite a few more of them too that we use for these temporary trellises. So I'm going to pull all those out of there. And then we're going to come in here with a weed eater and just cut everything off right at the level. All this green vegetation we're going to cut off right at the level. Then we're going to gather it all up, put it in that wheelbarrow, and haul it over here. Now earlier this morning I was already out here. I wetted this down really well with a garden hose, and then I put a whole bag of compost starter on it. And this is already pretty good compost. You can tell by looking at it. But we're getting ready to put all that extra vegetation on the top. And so now we'll go ahead, we'll clean up the whole garden, we'll get all that vegetation, we'll get it piled up here, we'll get the mower on top of it, we'll get it broken down. Now that I've got this soaking wet, now that I got that compost starter on there, all that does is just hedges my bets to get quicker compost better and get some of these pine needles broken down even faster, and some of this greenery that I'm putting on here today broken down even faster. And once all that's on there and all that's done and mowed and ready, then I'll go ahead and get my backhoe, get it over here, get this whole thing turned thoroughly once or even twice, get it all aerated and turned. Once it's thoroughly turned, I'll water it down heavily again. And I might even water it down mid-turn, get it turned once and water it down and then turn it one more time. We'll just see how dry it is once I turn it. If it's really dry or too dry, I'll go ahead and get in there and water it right in the middle of the process as well. We'll just have to see how that goes. But I'll get my backhoe back here, I'll get this all turned, and then once I have that done, I'll take my backhoe while I have it out and around, and I will drive it over here to the remnants of last fall's dirt project where I got tapped into city water right there and cut that whole line all the way up to there and ran the water line and all that stuff. That was the remnants from that. That was what was left over, and I'm going to take part of that, haul it up there, and fill in those low spots I was just talking about a minute ago. And that's what we're doing here today. We're taking advantage of a perfectly beautiful day. Crew's gone for the weekend. This gardening needs to be done. We're fully green lit to basically start planting almost whatever we want. We're still maybe slightly hesitant on tomatoes and stuff like that, but but we're basically green lit. And we've already got a pretty good start in the greenhouse this year. I'll show you how that's been going. Normally we hit it a little bit harder than this even. Normally this place is just absolutely full. But we still have quite a few things coming up. Now what they did was they brought a lot of plants up from seed in those types of containers, those types of vessels. And then once they became big enough, they transplanted them into bigger ones. Some they planted into bigger vessels initially, but most were planted into very small ones and then transplanted once they got big enough into soil blocks. Like these compressed soil blocks that all break apart and they just plant easily. They don't get root bound. They just plant nicely. So that's what they've been doing a lot of, is just these compressed soil blocks. And then some have been transplanted into just bigger pots, as you can see. We've got a lot of stuff going this year. Not as much as in years past in the greenhouse, but out in the garden, every bit as much. By the time it's all said and done, we'll have every bit as much going this year as any other year, except for, of course, treed and some of the bushes' fruit production, because of all these intermittent freezes we had this spring. Basically ruined most chances of getting any fruit off of any tree this year. But outside of that, we're going to produce just as much food this year as we have any previous year. Now, the other project that I'm working on this weekend, because like I said, today's a Saturday and the crew will be back and available by Tuesday. And I want to have the next project sitting in the shop and ready for what their tasks are by that point. So I want to have some of these other things knocked out by then. So that brings us to the next project that I'm going to be working on. They're gonna come get this here in a few days. Like I said, it's Saturday. They never did make it here at the end of the week. And so they'll be here probably Monday morning, I'd imagine, to get this truck. But regardless of when they come to get this truck, however, the other project that I'm going to be working on this weekend, once I'm done with the gardening portion of it, is these two kind of vintage step stools. And what I'm going to be doing with them is sandblasting them, taking them all apart. I really don't have a choice because they're two-tone. They're going to be white and orange, and they're both going to be similar to each other. Even though they're not a set, they were probably never built even anywhere near the same year as each other. They just happen to be here together and they have the same owner. But I'm going to do them in the same two-tone. And so they'll be similar to each other in that fashion. But this is really dished in and this is really dished in. And this right here has been kinked and straightened out at some point. I need to do something about that and make that look a little better at the top and the bottom. I need to take all these parts off so the orange ones can be orange and the white can be white, and I can decide what I'm going to do here. So I'll be taking these all apart after I sandblast. I'll take it out, I'll sandblast it, and I'll take them all apart. I'll probably end up doing body work to the top of both of these because they're both dished in an unnatural way. And then I'll go ahead and decide what's going to be what color, and then I'll get them all put back together as well. Hopefully before the crew gets back and we can get started on the next project here in the shop. Okay, so here it is a few hours later. Jen cleaned out everything she wanted out of all these tires while I was back there cleaning out everything back there. And I was going to do the weed eater. I even brought it out, but I never fired it up at all. I ended up just pulling them all. We figured we'd get the roots and all. There were so many weeds. We wanted to get a good start. And that just makes for that much more good material that we can haul over to the compost. We already hauled one of these, every bit as full as this. Every bit as full. I mean, I was losing stuff on the way over there. So this is the second load right here. And we have a third load between what we're going to be pulling out of these beds here. There's 3 of them. And that pile right there, we still have a third load. And those are going to go right over here. Well, all right, that took a little bit of doing, but as you saw, it only took a minute or two, and I reduced all this to just absolute mulch. I even turned it a few times, as you saw. just to make sure that the stuff wasn't just getting turned underneath and left in long form. And there's very few things left that are in long form. Now it's all just basically really, really fine stuff, more than ready to be broken down further. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the second load, put it up here. I'm gonna leave that right there for the moment. There's no reason to get it back down. Put the second load up here, put a big old toupee on here, mow it back down with that, do the third load, fourth, fifth, however many we're doing today. And then, like I said, at the end of the day, stir it all in. All right, there's two loads reduced to this. I mean, that's going to blend right into this soil so easily. Along with this compost starter, this stuff will be gone in 2 weeks. Okay, now that was the third load. And as you see, I've reduced the entire thing to this. And so as far as pulling all of the excess vegetation from this upper garden area, we're done. We're done pulling it and removing it entirely. Now we can get on to the planting. These are just out here to acclimate for a few days. They will be planted here really soon though. But now this is finally ready for planting, and now we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna move on to the center garden. And this is one of the side gates for the center garden. We got a pear tree, peach tree, pear tree, numerous crabapple trees. We've got choke cherry trees, big peach trees, small peach trees. We've got currants of 3 different types over here. But what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and remove these trellises and get rid of all the vegetation that we don't want in here, pull it and load it in the wheelbarrows just like we just did, and then haul it out of here and put it on the compost as well. Now here's one of the things you can grow in your garden that will attract pollinators even very early in the year, because they bloom very early in the year, and that's onions. We didn't plant these, we just let them go to seed every year. Onions, chives, they bring them in. I mean, look at that. Just on one plant. Not just the big bees, there's all sorts of little guys flying around too, and moths and butterflies. And just a ton of pollinators on just this one. Okay, so we've cleaned up a few of the beds here. In fact, we've cleaned all of them up but 2 to the point that we wanted to. And we've left those because there's certain families of insects still in there. We're waiting for the young ones to come up a little bit better than they are. So we've held off on those, but everything else has had all the weeds pulled, freshly watered. Certain seeds have been put in, and a lot of these other plants have been set out here for the sake of hardening them off. So they're not going to be planted just yet. They're just going to be outside for a bit. This pile right here, 5 loads in total. 5 full loads, and then I got it all mowed down. So what you see there on the top is about 3 steady inches all the way around, and I pushed a bunch of it to the outside perimeter so it would all be spread good and evenly. And so some of it's coming down the sides here, as you can see, coating the sides, because here in just a few minutes I'm going to go fire up my backhoe and I'm going to turn all this. So I wanted it evenly coated with 2 to 3 inches of good brand new green mulch, and now it is. Okay, now that gives me a good enough start here. I can come out here with a rake and finish this out, put a nice flat top on it and get the sides where I want them and all that sort of stuff. But I think I got it good and mixed up here. And now I'm going to take this guy right over here to this pile and get a load or two and go put it in those low spots. And then once I'm done using that rake on the compost pile over there, I'll bring it over here and I'll spread out all this stuff that I dropped off in this little ditch right here and in this low spot right here. Get this all kind of smoothed out, put back where it goes. Well, all right, it's just about 7 o'clock at night. We're about to put the tools up for the evening, but we got quite a bit done today. Right here were those low spots where I dumped that dirt earlier. Dumped it all the way down through there. This was all just a really low spot. And even at the in front of the trailer, you can still see where it kind of is, but I'm going to wait for that to all materialize throughout the summer. And then this fall, I'll fill it all back in flat. And then we'll put a nice layer of, just a nice little 1-inch layer of compost on top of it, and then some grass seed in it and get that started before winter. So this is all going to just be reclaimed. It's not going to be driveway anymore. But this is the first part of the process, is to get it all filled back in and then let it settle again over the summer and see when, you know, what happens. But I got all this in here, which was settled in 4 or more inches, all filled back in. And over here, I finished up all my compost work, as you saw. We chopped up all that greenery, 5 wheelbarrows full of greenery, chopped it all up into fine mulch. And then also, and this was, and dumped it on top of compost starter and on top of compost heap that I had wetted down thoroughly this morning, and then mixed it up thoroughly. And then I just flattened it all back out and got it all back ready for use, just by putting one makeshift step so we can get up there and actually evenly distribute vegetables and things like that up top. And then we can start pulling from it whenever we're ready. Now it's all flipped and ready to go. This is definitely my favorite time of year. It's absolutely gorgeous evenings, still cool enough at night that you don't have to have an air conditioner on in the house, and no bugs to speak of. I mean, we get the pollinators and stuff, but no mosquitoes and things like that, deer flies or anything like that. The house flies or black flies haven't gotten out of control yet. This is definitely my favorite time of year, and this evening is absolutely perfect. I mean, the temperature, the amount of breeze moving around, everything, absolutely perfect. I'll probably stay out here till dark, but that's all the gardening I'm doing for the day anyway. Well, good morning, gang. Well, it's Sunday morning here, May 24th, 2026. And now this morning we're going to continue with some of these additional garden chores. I am going to try and get that those toolboxes and that couple stools that I have sandblasted this afternoon. But it's not a huge urgent deal. I just want to have the next project in the shop and ready for the crew when the crew's ready, when they finally get back. So in between now and then, as far as I'm concerned, if I can wrap up a lot of these outdoor chores, I might as well do it. And one of the very first ones I'm going to do here today is I have this back, Jen calls it a Patio, because it's our back deck that I fully enclosed here a year or so ago. And then we even have it enclosed on the top. We have chicken wire across the top, and then here's this door that we can close. And that door has a cat door in it that allows cats only in. It never allows them out. It literally has a screw in place to keep it from ever allowing them out. And so that way we can control, you know, if you watch my videos, you know how we control the flow of cats around here. And anyway, as you can see, it's 11 o'clock in the morning, and this is kind of glaring sunlight back here. Well, there's Marcy. Hi, Mars. Our newest arrival. Loves humans, hates cats. But anyway, I'm going to take this sunshade here that we bought. We bought this thing like 2 summers ago, and we gave like $70 for it. It's a larger dimension, like 20 by 30 or 20 by 20. I don't remember exactly what it was, but we cut it down to size, put it up here and custom fit it to this shape, and then cut it down to size to where it would overlap around the edges, and then we could put screws with fender washers in it all the way around the edges, and that's what holds it down. And then I've got boards that go across these boards here, but on the outside, so they're on the very top. I have to get up on the roof and string them around and put them on the very top of the sunshade once it's on there, so the sunshade doesn't sit and ripple too much in the wind. And that's why I have the 3 cross braces that all screw down that I designated for this 2 summers ago, and we just put them up in the winter in the same location as we put that. And so I just keep reusing them every year. And so that's what I'll get those boards out and get my ladder out and get up on the roof and get the 3 boards strung out on top of the sunshade once I get it strung out. And then when I'm done with that chore, I'm gonna have to go through the garden and pull a lot of these. This plant right here is called motherwort. And it's a great plant. I don't have any problem with it. But if you don't get control of it, it will get control of you. At least in this part of the world anyway, is quite invasive. So you have to keep control of motherwort. And little Marcy's gonna help. Anyway, you remember in the last few videos how I had mentioned that this house had a bunch of water damage on the inside on the ceiling, and that was a big part of why so many people had looked at it before me and passed on it, even though the price was so low. And then when I showed up and saw the water damage, the first thing I did was just get up and peek on the roof, because I used to do roofs for a living, so I know what I'm looking for. And I knew that I could tell at a glance the roof was good, and I could tell at a glance that all that happened was somebody had put the company that made the house, that actually probably were the ones that did it, put plastic vents up here, and a hailstorm had busted them all. And so rain had gotten through and snow had gotten through all these vents, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these vents that were all busted up. And so in all those spots, water was getting through. It was making spots on the inside of the house and fooling everybody into believing that the house needed an entire roof along with an entire interior and an entire exterior. This house there was nothing left but the bones, which it's a Friendship home out of Minnesota, so there's good bones. That's why we bought the house. I'm familiar with Friendship. We bought a brand new double wide of theirs years ago. They're well built. So the bones were good. I was happy with that, but that's what happened was that water damage is what made so many people before us pass on this house. And when I saw that there was no real reason for the water damage and it was easily remedied, I didn't bother mentioning that. And we got it for next to nothing up in Billings and moved it all down here, and that whole rest of the story. But here's the ones I put on here. This was probably 12 years ago that I put those on there, and they're holding up great. We haven't had a single water issue in the house since I did that. And I did that long before we ever remodeled the house. As soon as we got the house onto the property, it was fall of that year, and I didn't want it to go through winter just collecting more water up there. So first thing I did, as soon as we got it parked here on the property, I went ahead and put all these vents on here. And then the next year, throughout the next entire year, we remodeled the interior while we were living in a different location on the property. And then once we were all finally done, then we moved everything over. And that's how that all went. But so here I am up here. Here's a view. Here's what it would look like without the forest in the way. I mean, I don't want the forest removed. I'm just saying it's quite an expanse out there, and the whole countryside is like that. All the way through here. If this wasn't here, that's what it would look like. But I'm getting ready to take this stuff here, this shade, put it over that, and I'm going to put those 3 boards across those 3 boards. And then I'm going to screw those down on top of this, screw the boards down on top of this. Then I'm going to go around the entire perimeter and put my small screws that go through fender washers all the way around the outside. And now at this point, I've got the whole thing all spread out. I've gone all the way around the perimeter with small screws with fender washers. Got her all snugged up. Now I'm going to go ahead and put these 3 boards on top of those 3 boards and get those screwed down. Well, all right, gang. This guy is secure, ready to cast some shade on the back deck for the rest of the summer. Now I'm ready to get down from here, get the tools all cleaned up and get everything all cleaned up from this job, and get on to pulling some of that motherwort. So here's what this garden section full of motherwort looked like before I got to it. And here it is after having cleaned all that motherwort out of here. Throughout this entire stretch, I got it all out of there, everything I could find. All the way down to that corner. In fact, I got it all. There isn't any beyond that. There never was, but I got everything on this whole stretch all out of there. And now as I roam other parts of the garden that are more rich than others in motherwort, I'll go ahead and get those cleared out. And as I go, I'll get all of these pine cones up out of the pathway, so they're just not in the pathway, and I'll move them up into the garden area, because the more evenly dispersed they are up here, the less digging the cats end up doing in the garden. And here's that same rear deck area once the sunshade has been installed. As you can see, no glaring sun anywhere. Once the cats get used to that every spring, that it's going to be that way, These chairs get gradually fuller and fuller all the time, and so does the floor. And pretty soon, just about any time of day you walk out here, all these chairs have cats on them, and there might even be a few more on the floor as well. Everything that's not garden on this property needs to get raked. Like you can see, I've just raked up a little pile there, and then out from underneath the deck there and put it in a pile. And you can see all the piles back here. This is just years and years of buildup. As you can see, that old gray stuff is old stuff that's clear on the bottom. That's right there at the property line. And you know, that's not my property. I can't do anything about that. But if that burns straight to the ground, at least it won't creep over onto my property. And the predominant winds that blow here, almost always, 90+% of them blow this way, from that direction this way. Meaning that if something happens over there, and a lot of storms start over there actually. So you get a lightning strike over there, and it's been so dry. I mean, you've been seeing where I've been getting rain, and there's been some of the clips on my videos where that take place in the rain, but those are all rains that we're getting a 1/16 of an inch or an 1/8 of an inch, where normally this time of year we'd be getting 3/4 of an inch or an 1.25 inches or something big, something bigger like that. Big for this area, not big for some place like Pennsylvania, but big for this area is like 3/4 of an inch. And that's what we're used to getting 2-3 times a week in the spring. Only now it's only been a 1/16 of an inch or an 1/8 of an inch. So while we are getting rain, it's not nearly enough. This has been a very bad drought winter and a very bad drought spring. So to have a spring storm or a summer storm over there, and then have the wind carry it this way and have the fire ripping across the plains this way, you know, that's something that a lot of times, if it gets bad enough, you just have to get out of the way. So where I come up here around here, this is that hugel I showed you before. I'm not sure if I actually put it on the video or not. Maybe I edited it out, but this is just where we put all of our spare dirt and all of our spare stuff, and we're just going to grow flowers on it and things that the deer might like, or maybe stuff that they won't like, depending on how we want to do it. But we've got some bushes right over here on the other side. But outside of all that, back here, it's all just pine needles and pine cones everywhere, all the way up the side of the property. So if fire blows in from this way and comes up the bar ditch, which always has deep grass in it. The bar ditch has 3-foot deep grass in it, because we're just outside of the city limits, so they don't get to it and mow it nearly as often. It has to be the highway department. So literally from my driveway back, all of this doesn't get mowed but maybe once a year. And so it's like, even right now, it's over 3 feet deep in the bottom of that. And that makes for mosquito issues and this and that, but also that's good kindling. So if the fire hits that, it's going to come right up this hillside. It's going to hit all this, and all this is going to burn hot enough and long enough to go ahead and catch the trees. So to prevent all of that, every 4 or 5 years, it should be more often than that if I'm honest, but it turns out that it's about every 4 or 5 years we come through and just rake the entire property, get it all raked up to take our fire danger way down. So if something does ever come and it's really tearing up across the highway and it's blowing all kinds of sparks over here, we have way less chance of just catching numerous fires that we can't run around and put out in time if there's no kindling on the ground to do that. So that's why we do that. That's what I'm doing. I'm just spending a bunch of time raking, and I'm gonna rake up into small piles. Once I've made all the piles that I can possibly make on the property, then we'll just move the trailer around near them and just pick them all up and put them in the trailer and haul them all to the local dump and put them in a part of their facility that they have just for plants and you know, everything that's organic, tree limbs and grass clippings, and they have a spot for all that there at the dump. So and they recycle it. So we'll just take it down there. Normally we would put it with our put it in our compost pile, but that's just gonna be too much. A giant trailer load, and I don't even have any other spare dirt, and we don't really have a use for, you know, 5,000 metric tons of compost on this property. I have all the compost I really need. So I don't need to literally double the amount I have just to take care of all these pine needles, which will fall again, by the way, this fall. So I'm just going to get rid of this whole batch of them, get them off the property, and take my fire risk way down in doing so. Now, these guys are on their way. They're going to drop off another truck and swap it out with this truck, so that's why I've left it running. They'll be here literally any second. And so that truck's going to be swapped out with another one, and that new truck that they bring is going to be placed right here, and this one is going to be brought in the shop. And another thing I'm going to be doing today here is hand watering. I've got some spots that the sprinklers don't reach, like these beds right here, made out of Peterbilt fenders. And this bed back here, the final sprinkler in the whole system stops right about here. And so we're not watering the path all the time, and I just water this by hand. This is a strawberry bed. When I did a good sized garden project here a couple summers ago or springs ago, I had some of these entire pieces, because I bought a whole pallet of them, and some of the entire ones were just so badly bent they were almost C-shaped, and they didn't get used for my full-size garden beds, but they did get pieced up into these bite-sized chunks so I could just make them into this strawberry bed. That needs watered, and then I need to address some watering issues. I've got my sprinkler system set up here where it covers basically this entire upper garden, and it's not a soaker system, it's a regular overhead system, and it covers the whole garden except for just a couple of little spots, and today I'm going to also address that. So when Jen and I head to town, we're going to go to town and we got to pick up some materials for various projects, and when we do that, we're going to get the materials that I need to expand my sprinkler system a little bit and take care of some of these dry spots. Like right in here isn't getting hit with a sprinkler. So and then there's a couple back there that don't either. So I'm gonna just set up 3 sprinklers, 1 right here and 2 back there. And then there's some other just little spots that they don't quite cover that I want to either adjust or supplement additional sprinklers into. And look at this little adorable plum tree. If you watch my videos, my gardening videos from last year, you might remember that one plum tree that had just one branch. 12 foot or more up in the air, just one little spindly branch. And it was all it had. The trunk with one branch off of it, and it was loaded with these little green or yellow plums. And we cut all of that down because it was just dying on its own, and this thing has had nothing but problems ever since windstorms, not only windstorms, but a really bad freeze here a couple winters ago. And so these were the main leaders, right? And they've all been eliminated as time has gone on, but what this has is an excellent root system that is, I don't know, 7, 8 years old or something. And this one branch coming out here is looking to carry the entire torch. I mean, this branch has more than tripled in size in the last year alone, and it looks like it wants to go ahead and be the tree. And off of this well-established rootstock, it ought to do well. So it'll be interesting to see how this green gage makes a bit of a comeback here this year. Well, there he is leaving. And here's the one that he brought and just now dropped off. As you can see, this one is actually in silver. For a very short stint there, they got them with the same blue fenders, but instead of white, they were silver. I think they got the silver ones before they switched to the white ones, but I don't know for sure. Either way, they did get a few of these trucks that were silver and blue instead of white and blue, and this is one of them. And as you can see, this one also has clear coat issues. Peeling right off. This looks like about an 05. It's probably not an 05. This is an 03. I can tell because of their unit number. Their unit number coincides with what year the truck actually is. So yeah, this is an 03. So yeah, they did get the silver before they changed it all to the white. Because the 05s is when they started getting all these white trucks. This one looks fairly straight. Doesn't look like it's been wrecked, or if it has, it's been repaired enough that I can't tell right off the bat. But what I do know for sure is that these stoppers down inside of here that rest down on those pins, they're down in here actually. When you have the hood open, they're right in here. They rest down on those rubber pins down there, and that's what holds and bears the weight of the hood while it's going down the highway. Those stoppers have worn out the fiberglass post behind them and have moved up at least an inch. I can tell just by that. The top of this versus the top of that, and the fact that it's been banging into it. Those stoppers have been moved and wallowed out at least an inch. So I know I'm going to find that when I open this hood. Back of the sleeper is beat to absolute tar. I mean, it's got a huge dent right there, and then everything else is just small dents. Chassis badly needs sandblasted. Nevertheless, we won't be seeing this guy in the shop for a little bit because the one we're working on is this crispy little critter right here. We're going to go ahead and pull it in the shop right now. Okay, now I'm pretty much ready to sandblast. I went ahead and pulled the fenders off this guy, and then the grate that was right there in the center, and all the air lines and the electric cables, all that stuff off of there. We'll go ahead and get this guy blasted. I'm just going to use sand on this whole job because this chassis barely even needs sandblasted. It's just that it's been, I don't know how many years, like I said, probably 8 years or something. There's a little rust poking through in some spots. It's not detrimental, but the paint code has changed on this blue since this truck was done. So the blue that I'll put on here isn't going to match. And the old one, I'm not sure I can even retrieve. I've tried and haven't gotten any answer back, and it's not a huge deal, but I'm going to be reshooting the fenders and the roof caps, so I might as well make sure that the chassis matches. So it's a good opportunity to go in there and take care of what little rust that there is poking through in a couple spots, and just redo the chassis, freshen it up. And for that reason, it doesn't need to go to bare metal. I already know who painted it. I know the process that it went through. So all I need to do is rough it up, and I can do that with just used sand. Now right here, I've got this, this box normally hauls explosives. Same with that box right there. Explosives are explosive components. And so they're lined with plywood to start with, and then on the inside of that plywood, there's also this fireproof barrier stuff. So these boxes are extra heavy and bulky, but they both need painted. And so I'm gonna go ahead. I had to lift this one with my forklift. It is so heavy, and just put it on this cart. Now I'm gonna go ahead and blast this, blast the smaller box, blast the 2 brackets that came inside the bigger box, and then these 2 stools, of course. All with used sand, all in this session here right now. Well, the first thing I think we can comfortably deduce on this is that we are going to be painting the hood. There's no way for me to separate it out. If this was like a 379 hood, you know, where the panels meet right here and then they meet in the middle, and there's different places you could separate it out and paint just part of a hood. But I don't have any choice here. This is just all one piece. We're going to have to do the hood for sure. We're going to have to do the door for sure. And this panel right here, from here to here, is pretty damn badly warped. I don't know if I can catch that on camera or not, but you see that? I mean, it's pretty badly warped. Just from here to here. So what I'm thinking about doing here is removing this exhaust, this mirror, this air cleaner, and we're gonna have to paint this side of the truck at least to here. This door doesn't need painted, but this door does. Because since we did this truck, and it's been quite a few years, it actually has a pretty good sized dent right here. So we'll have to go through and fix that dent. And since we're gonna paint that door, we might as well just paint that door and call it good. And we'll probably mask it from here back, because none of this needs any work. The back is still clean. I don't even know if there's any new dings in it or anything. After all these years, it still looks brand new. So we'll mask it from here back, and then from the roof cap down, because we are going to have to paint the roof cap. It's all bubbled up. We are going to paint this entire side of the truck. So we're for sure going to do the hood, passenger side of the truck, and both roof caps. As I come around the driver's side, I just don't see any reason to redo anything here. This looks clean and new for all intents and purposes. I mean, it's a little dirty, maybe, but that's it. You wash this thing up and wipe it down, and it's going to look like a new truck. So just more proof that our paint jobs hold up for year after year after year after year, even out in the oil field, even out in construction sites. But they don't hold up as well when they're sitting next to a truck that is as hot as the sun. So that's what this one went through. We're going to go ahead and get it fixed. This truck was so close to burning down that I see evidence of it everywhere. I'll show you a few of these things that I'm seeing. Right here. Look at this. This is just almost turned to liquid. Then even over here on the top of the sleeper cap, it is just bubbled up. Look at that. And then here, look at this antenna. I mean, it almost has the rubber melted all the way off of it. This electrical tape that was holding this up melted all the way in two, or almost completely in two. Look at that line. melted. The ends melted all the way off. This truck was probably less than a minute from burning down if they hadn't pulled it out of the way. And while I leave the boys in here to finish up this masking, I have plenty of projects that I've been working on outside. I introduced a whole new leg to my watering system, 3 more sprinklers and posts and locations to my overhead sprinkler system here. I got a lot of these really dense spots back here raked up. As you can see, just that little bit of raking in that little spot made a pile that big. That's how dense it was and deep. Same with this. Got that all done. Got the piles back here picked up. I'm getting ready today to retrieve this bed and get it out of this location, because back behind that sand was a silly idea. Then it's just going to take 4 to 6 people to pick it up and actually walk it over this giant pile of sand to get it out of here, because there's no other realistic way to get it out of here. Yes, it is back out of the way, but I shouldn't have piled that sand in front of it. So now that I'm getting ready to take this sand out today, that's another thing I'm doing today, by the way, then I'll go ahead and get this guy out of here. Got all those piles raked up back here and packed it all into this trailer. I mean, I had this thing this full, and then I would get up on top of it and walk around until it was all flattened down, and then I would fill it up that full again and then get on down on the top and walk on it until it was all flattened down. I have this thing compacted like 4 times. This trailer weighs so much it actually has the tires squatted down. That's how many pine needles and pine cones I have on this thing. And that's what you see on that trailer, is all the stuff that was back here, which is literally, that trailer represents not even probably a quarter of the pine needles that I'm removing from this property within the next couple of weeks. You can see I've got this tarp pulled off of here, off of this sand pile right here. And this is my spare sand that I use throughout the winter. And I've used this sand for years and years. And because I've used it for years and years, it gets run through my sandblaster and put out here into this sea of sand. And then pine needles fall onto it. And if I don't stay up on the raking of the pine needles and keep them off of it, they get worked down into the sand. Then they just become part of it. And then over time, they get, in the fall, they get all scooped back up and put back over here. And those pine needles just sit there in that sand and degrade over the course of the next year or years. And so if I don't really stay up on the pine needles and plant roots too, during the summer, we get a bunch of weeds out here. If I don't stay up on it and keep them actually pulled, you come through with a mower and you're leaving all those roots, that's a bad thing, because you have to actually pull them. So if I don't keep up on all that, those roots stay down in the sand, and then they decompose each and every winter when, you know, fall comes and the plants die, and then the roots decompose. And so then all that organic material built up over the years, both with roots and pine needles, breaks down further and further and further and becomes actual fibers in there that you can't even see. You walk up and it looks like a sand pile. You put it on your shovel and look at it, it looks just like sand with a few little things in it. But you go to run it through a screen and you go shaking that screen, all of a sudden all those little fibers that almost look like cotton candy, they're so fine like that, they're like cotton candy, they all come out and they plug the screen immediately. So then all your sand is on top of the screen, just not moving. So in other words, then you have to remove the sand, get all of that stuff raked off of the screen, put the sand back in there, have it happen again. So what I'm getting at is, it isn't very long before screening your sand takes 5 times longer than it ever should. It becomes, the sandblasting a project takes 4 to 5 times longer than it ever should, just because of the extreme screening process you have to go through once it gets that full of plant life. And that's why eventually I do cycle out my sand. And a lot of times I'll use it on projects, like I'll put it in the bottom of ditches where I run water lines or something like that. We'll use it for stuff like that. Jen's got some garden use for this black sand this year. She's going to be putting it in her melon beds, a layer of it across the top, because it'll attract the heat, and it'll also still let moisture through, and it's not as inconvenient as some of this landscaping fabric can be. When it comes to melons, you know, you want to keep your beds dark in color so they sit and attract heat and stay good and warm. This year we're going to try the sand with it. So I'm gonna get this sand out of here today and get my backhoe over here. That's what I'm doing right now. In fact, I'm getting ready to go get my backhoe. I'm gonna get this sand out of here. I got my tarps off of it, got it all ready to go. I'm gonna get it all scooped up and out of here, and then I'm gonna pile it up on the other side of the property where she's planning on using it in the melon beds. Then I'm gonna bring my backhoe back over here and I'm gonna gather up this sand. And as you can see, if it looks deep on the video, I'm not sure if it does, but if it does, then that's because it is. This is, what you're seeing is at least 6 inches deep, but this whole mound itself is 10 to 12 inches deep. This whole thing is just a big pile of sand that I can really no longer back trucks through very easily. Now trucks are just wanting to spin out, and I'm having to pull clear forward and get a big run at it up to the shop because it's just too much sand. And that happens, you know, that's part of the cycle. You use enough new sand on all these PACCAR chassis, and pretty soon you just have this sand that you can even hardly walk in. And you can't really even drive vehicles through. You can't really back vehicles up in it or anything. So once it gets this deep, I gather it all up, I put it over here, I cover it all up with tarps, so when it rains, I don't have to worry about it, and I can use used sand all winter long that's good and clean. This will completely replace this and begin the many year process of being used over and over and over, as this sand has. This sand pile was 3 times that big, but I used a bunch of it to line the bottom of my water ditches last fall when I put in all that water line. So that's what I used a bunch of it for. And now I'm going to use a bunch of it, the rest of it this year, for other stuff. And like I said, I'm going to replace it with this. All right, so this is the third and final load out of here. Got everything that's useful shoveled out of here. I'll go ahead and get this out of here. And as you can see, I've got plywood down underneath there. This is old plywood off of an old roof job. So it's 3/4 inch plywood that wasn't even full 4x8 sheets. It was just good size sheets. That's what I stuck down here on the ground to make it to where in the winter time when I'm out here getting used sand, I don't have to worry about shoveling dirt up off the ground beneath it, or wondering where the bottom of the pile is, where the pile meets the ground. And that'll make for easier shoveling too. If you have plywood there, it makes for just nice, easy shoveling, and it keeps the moisture from the ground from absorbing up into the sand. So it serves multiple purposes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get this out of here, get it dumped. Like I said, it's the third load. I'll go get it dumped where I've got it. I'll get this fished up out of the sand, these 2 or 3 pieces that I've got here of plywood, get them out of the way, come back with my forks on so I can go ahead and get a hold of that guy and get it out of here. Okay, so from the looks of it here, this is probably an easy 6-7 ton of sand. And now my black sea of sand isn't nearly so deep and plentiful. Now I can back trucks up on it without getting them stuck right here in my yard. Well, okay, gang, now that the truck is all masked up, I just told the crew to go ahead and take off from here because there's no need for them to run around sanding everything just yet. These roof caps aren't going to take that long to sand. The rest of that hood's not going to take that long to sand. There's no real body work to speak of. All the body work and the entire reason this truck is in here is facing me right now. It's this side of the truck. So this isn't a complete that I can have them off just working on other stuff mindlessly all day while I'm doing my stuff so we can all come together at the end at the same time. That is essentially what we're going to do, but I don't need them sanding roofs and hood today. That's not going to take that long. And so what I'm going to be doing today instead is I'm going to be addressing just how wrinkled this panel is. And I'm going to start to look at just how warped this panel is. So I'm going to have to get my die grinder out with a cutting wheel on it. Not with a burr. You could do these with a burr, but man, it's going to clog your burr and it's going to take all day. I use a cutting wheel. And I'm going to cut all of these off, and not the way you think. When I say cutting wheel, I know what you're picturing. You're picturing me coming in like this and cutting them off going just like that, or just like that, right? Just cutting them off like a baboon and just having a giant wound in the truck. But that's not how I do these. I actually start and I give really light pressure, and I'll put I'll plaster my knuckles or my elbow or something, usually my forearm and knuckles, to the truck to make sure that I have total stability, and then I'll just move this little part right here and give light pressure, and then give increasingly heavy pressure as I get comfortable with the movement until this is all taken down evenly, and then pretty soon you'll be able to see the center, and then pretty soon this little rim that's left around the outside here will just fall off. And you will get a little bit of scarring right here, and sometimes you'll go off this side and get a little bit of scarring. They're going to take a little bit of body work, but not nearly as much as if you take after it, you know, like a heathen and just gouge them out that way. I just use light pressure and go like this and take them out that way. And so at this point, I'm going to go ahead and just remove as many of these as I think I need to. I'll get in there, I'll look at it really closely, and I'll remove every single one of them if I need to. But that's going to make for an unstable panel. This panel is going to become more like a bed sheet, and then it's going to be hard to work with. So it's best if we leave a few, but we'll just see how it goes. I'm going to remove every single one of them that I need to, and just basically do body work on this entire panel here. Okay, now at this point I've taken out all the rivets that I intend to. As you can see, it leaves very little footprint. And this all going to be filled with body work anyway. Now what I could do next is I could go through and I could use a air hammer or a punch and a regular hammer and just knock each one of those in. They're going to need to be knocked in at some point anyway. But if I do that, then this whole panel will pop out away from that brace and it'll be free to do whatever it wants. Right now, it's held as though it's riveted. I've got it fooled into believing it's riveted. So I might as well sand my body work, do all my body work, get everything done, then start punching some of these out. So if this panel does pop out away from its brace after that point, who cares? I'm gonna rivet it and it'll go right back to where it was, which is right back to flat. So that's what I'm gonna do. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take some measurements. Because for instance, see this measurement right here? Now look at the next one down. Look how it looks wider. That's because it is. These are all consistent with each other. All these up here and all these down here. But right in here is a wider one, and you need to get that documented, because if you try and re-drill these later, all according to this measurement, you'll be off from here down. Every one of them will be off. All right, the glazing looks pretty good. Everything's sanded out pretty even. I still need to go around it with a DA sander before I could green light it entirely, but now I'm gonna go ahead and just start working with this door. I'm gonna get the stickers off of it, strip it down, try and get a feel for what we've got, what needs to go in, what needs to come out, what needs to happen with this door.